Good evening, my fellow Americans.
Take the red pill.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
The disastrous rise of misplaced power exists.
All we have built, all we have worked for, would be destroyed.
There is nothing the political establishment will not do.
And this nation will not be fully free until all its citizens are free.
Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action,
These criminals cannot be rewarded.
so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction.
There is a point beyond which they must not advance.
They're coming after you, and I'm just standing in their way. Here I am.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny.
The cost of freedom is always high.
Those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
This is a crusade! This is a holy war against the deep state!
We never wanted to be right, but yet things are all adding up to the firestorm.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington and for the global special interest, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. Our campaign represents a true existential threat like they haven't seen before. This is not simply another four-year election. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government. The political establishment that is trying to stop us is the same group responsible for our disastrous trade deals, massive illegal immigration, and economic and foreign policies that have bled our country dry. The political establishment has brought about the destruction of our factories and our jobs as they flee to Mexico, China, and other countries all around the world. It's a global power structure that is responsible for the economic decisions that have robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities. This is a struggle for the survival of our nation, and this will be our last chance to save it. This election will determine whether we're a free nation or whether we have only the illusion of democracy, but are in fact controlled by a small handful of global special interests rigging the system, and our system is rigged. This is reality. You know it, they know it, I know it, and pretty much the whole world knows it. The Clinton machine is at the center of this power structure. We've seen this firsthand in the WikiLeaks documents, in which Hillary Clinton meets in secret with international banks to plot the destruction of U.S. sovereignty in order to enrich these global financial powers, her special interest friends, and her donors. Honestly, she should be locked up. The most powerful weapon deployed by the Clintons is the corporate media, the press. Let's be clear on one thing. The corporate media in our country is no longer involved in journalism. They're a political special interest, no different than any lobbyist or other financial entity with a total political agenda, and the agenda is not for you, it's for themselves. Anyone who challenges their control is deemed a sexist, a racist, a xenophobe. They will lie, and then again, they will do worse than that. They will do whatever is necessary. The Clintons are criminals, remember that. This is well documented, and the establishment that protects them has engaged in a massive cover-up of widespread criminal activity at the State Department and the Clinton Foundation in order to keep the Clintons in power. They knew they would throw every lie they could at me and my family and my loved ones. They knew they would stop at nothing to try to stop me. Nevertheless, I take all of these slings and arrows gladly for you. I take them for our movement so that we can have our country back. I knew this day would arrive. It's only a question of when. And I knew the American people would rise above it and vote for the future they deserve. The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people. Our great civilization has come upon a moment of reckoning. I didn't need to do this, folks, believe me. I built a great company, and I had a wonderful life. I could have enjoyed the fruits and benefit of years of successful business deals and businesses for myself and my family, instead of going through this absolute horror show of lies, deceptions, malicious attacks. Who would have thought? I'm doing it because this country has given me so much, and I feel so strongly that it's my turn to give back to the country that I love. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Josh. Welcome to the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose. We are live with you Monday through Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. This is where we bring you the unfolding global conspiracy. And tonight's episode is the Axis of Evil. It was quite coincidental. I haven't checked the news all day and kind of had a few hours. So sat down, started doing the news, and I did a Twitter post. And I said in the Twitter post that the Axis of Evil has been named by NATO. And immediately after, I go find this Daily Mail article that was published around 3 o'clock Eastern time, around the same time that I published that, talking about the Axis of Evil. And I found, wow, that's just coincidental. And we know with the Indian Nostradamus, the one guy who made the prediction that World War III started today, that we would be looking out for something that would give that indication. And nothing happened significantly today, except for a few things. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more. And there's some other news that we're going to go through, but kind of an interesting day. They've been interesting days, not days. There's not a lot happening, but there's small little subtle moves on the chessboard. And those small little subtle moves on the chessboard are making all the difference. And no, I don't think that World War III started today, but I can tell you that the chess moves for checkmate in a large sense happened today. And that could be given off as an indication of that. And we're going to look at a few different things that are going to show that. But first, if you are new here, if you are new to the Red Pill Project, the Daily Dose, or any of the shows that we have on our channel, the channel is, by the way, called Decentralized Media. There'll be more coming about that here soon. Website will be launching here probably in the next month or so. But what we have is we have a tons of different shows on there: Unrestricted Warfare, the Daily Dose, Conversations on the Fringe, Beyond the Bible. We have Dr. Lee Merritt's show that goes every Friday at noon. And we got a few more shows that are going to be joining us, and some more channels going to be joining in with us. So this is pretty cool. It's an exciting time in the sense of media and information. So what I urge you to do is go out there and hit that subscribe button. If you are not, if you're on Rumble, Facebook, give those thumbs up, give those likes, give those comments, share this out there, get it out there, because we have a track record here. People will tell you we have a good track record here of being incredibly accurate of what is happening in the world. And I'm proud of that, but I also am mad about that because I don't want to be right with what is happening. Unfortunately, that's the situation and the time that we are in this world. And Donald Trump's speech right there, the speech that'll get Donald Trump elected, he talks a lot about This is not about him. This is not about the things that people at that level can do. This is about you. That America only gets saved is if you save it. And that happens on so many different fronts, but this is one of the main ones, is that we have to take back the domain of information. And we've done a great job of that over the last 4 to 5 years, last 8 years. We've taken back the domain of information. We also suppressed the mainstream media. There's a lot of different articles coming out these days talking about how this alternative media is hurting the accuracy of real news, what they call real news, the mainstream media, and that people no longer trust the mainstream media, no longer even go to the mainstream media for their content. Instead, they're going to people like me and other podcasters out there to get their news. Well, that's a beautiful thing. I mean, that is a beautiful thing. A once monopoly on the entertainment industry. Now we have something completely different to where anybody out there with a laptop computer can go out and stream a video or record their voice and become the news and media and tell it how they see it. I mean, isn't that what this is all about? Is sharing opinions on certain things that are happening, sharing the facts that are actually coming out, and not cherry picking the news and the information to get likes and views, or cherry picking the news and information to align towards an agenda or an ideology? This is all about getting the facts out there, and that's what we try to do here. So much appreciated for all the support out there. Also, if you are new here, redpills.tv, redpills.tv, best way to go out there, find us, support us, and help us out. We definitely need your support, so much appreciated on all of that. But let's get started with the axis of evil, because this was kind of interesting. Let me see. This was at 6:31 p.m. Yeah, I posted this at 6:31 p.m. This is about the time that I got online and started posting on Twitter. And I said, the axis of evil has been named. And this is, if Putin wins, the world will become more dangerous, according to NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg. Russia's war in Ukraine is a brutal assault on the peaceful democratic nation. This war is propped up by China, North Korea, and Iran. They want to see the United States fail. They want to see NATO fail. If they succeed in Ukraine, it'll make us more vulnerable and the world more dangerous. So our support is not charity, it is our own security interest. In other words, Jens here is making a declaration of war. Let's listen.
And with Sweden and Finland as members, we are stronger than ever. Russia's war in Ukraine is a brutal assault on a peaceful democratic nation. This war is propped up by China, North Korea, and Iran. They want to see the United States fail. They want to see NATO fail. If they succeed in Ukraine, it will make us more vulnerable and the world more dangerous. So our support to Ukraine is not charity, it is in our own security interest. We all want this war to end, but the Russian occupation of Ukraine offers no peace. And capitulation to Putin, and with Sweden.
So he said that the democratic, it's a threat to the democratic nation of Ukraine. He says it right here. He says, if they succeed in Ukraine, it will make us more vulnerable and the world more dangerous, right? He says that Russia's war in Ukraine is a brutal assault on the peaceful democratic nation of Ukraine. Didn't Zelensky just suspend elections once again and declare himself dictator? Isn't it when the war started, Zelensky suspended the democratic process in Ukraine? He went in there and arrested almost all of the opposition party because he claimed that they were loyal to Russia. Isn't it Zelensky who went out there and rounded up anybody in Ukraine who had Russian ties in the sense of the oligarchical or political ties? Isn't it Zelensky who has been just taking U.S. taxpayer dollars since he's been in office and since this proxy war has gone on, buying himself mansions and yachts and starting businesses and embezzling it out towards his other heads of state? Isn't it Zelensky or Ukraine in general that has been running a massive money laundering banking operation for the last 20 years, or at least since 2014 to be accurate? That what happens is that the IMF or the World Bank would loan Ukraine money, and that money would go into a state bank. That state bank would go defunct. The money would be embezzled out to NGOs, nonprofits, charities, or various political ideologies and campaigns around the world. And then the Ukraine taxpayer would be on the hook for that money. The same thing happens with US taxpayer dollars. You want to think that our money is going to weapons and defense in Ukraine. It absolutely is not. That is just a staging platform for the war against Russia that was pre-planned prior to the coup on Donald Trump. So what we're seeing in Ukraine, or what Ukraine is definitely not a peaceful democratic nation. If anything, they are a dictatorship ruled by a very corrupt authoritarian state that is embezzling your taxpayer dollars to make them, their elite class, much more wealthy, richer, fatter, and happier. And they're going to escape as fast as possible when the time is right, because Russia is relentless and Russia is not going to stand down. Now, it doesn't matter if I love Russia or I hate Russia, or if I love Ukraine or I hate Ukraine. How about this? I love the Ukrainian people and I love the Russian people. I have no dime in this game in the sense of Russia and Ukraine's politics, but I can tell you from the political standpoint that Ukraine is a controlled and manipulated Western asset, that since 2014, they have been utilized to develop biological weapons within Ukraine, nuclear weapons within Ukraine for unnamed armies around the world. They've been one of the heads of the money laundering operation within Eastern Europe, coming out of the Middle East for a very, very long time. What else? They are the center point, the center port for the majority of human trafficking, drug, and arms trades that go in and out of Europe, the Middle East, and Northern Africa. So, yeah, that's definitely not a peaceful democratic nation, Jens. But NATO is going to stand up for them because NATO is the head of all of that. It's one of the big parts of the military snake that is ahead of this global crime syndicate that we're seeing being unraveled right now. But what Jens just said there was almost a declaration of war. Now, I found it really interesting that I go out there and say that the axis of evil has been named. China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. The new axis of evil has been formed. And immediately I go and I start getting my news stories for the day. And I see this from the Daily Mail. Fiends reunited. Axis of evil pals. Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un beam as Russia despot arrives to state visit North Korea. I found just an interesting choice of words right there. And yes, Vladimir Putin visited North Korea today. He arrived in North Korea for the first visit in 24 years, vows to fight U.S.-led sanctions on North Korea. Well, what happens if U.S. sanctions are lifted off of North Korea and North Korea is able to join the BRICS or get into the BRICS economic system? They're going to become an incredibly wealthy country. They are very, very rich in various different types of natural resources and have been suppressed since the 1970s by the United States government, or the 1990s by the United States government. So Putin goes there, and I came out and I said this. I said that North Korea is going to be the new proxy against the United States. Okay? And I said this right here. The streets of North Korea are littered with Russian flags, head and toe. Pictures of Putin ahead of his visit to the country. And I said, Russia is going to use North Korea as a proxy against the U.S. How do they do that? Well, you have South Korea and Taiwan primarily South Korea and Japan. You have three major development hubs of microchips in the world that China has been wanting to control for a very long time. What happens now, Russia moves in with North Korea. North Korea begins a proxy military campaign on South Korea and even Japan, and helps to basically draw in that proxy war that is already happening with Ukraine, Russia, and the U.S. And what that's going to do is stretch U.S. assets more thin than you can ever imagine within the Asian Peninsula. This gives China the ability to begin moving in on Taiwan, and it allows the BRICS nations to really secure a primary front of resources within that whole area. So really important to remember there. There's a few other things about that visit. I'm going to go into that here in a second. NATO has gone full retard. Again, we're going to go to Jens over there. NATO chief threatens to sanction China if they don't change their behavior to the United States of America. Listen to this shit. This is getting more and more unbelievable. So in a sense, the World War III kind of did start today, because you have Jens over here, Jens Stoltenberg, basically calling out Russia, saying that NATO is going to attack Russia because they have to. They have to be preemptive against Russia, or all of Europe is going to be at risk and the world is not going to be a safe place. And then you have him say this.
Trying to get it both ways. China's propping up the Russian war economy. They are sharing a lot of technologies, microelectronics, which are key for Russia to build missiles, weapons they use against Ukraine. But at the same time, China tries to maintain normal economic relationships with European NATO allies.
So you think there should be sanctions, perhaps?
At some stage, we should consider some kind of economic cost if China doesn't change their behavior, because now China is the main supporter of Russia's war effort, war aggression against Ukraine, the biggest war in Europe since the Second World War, and at the same time they try to have a normal relationship with European allies, and this cannot work in the long run.
This cannot work in the long run. You just heard it there from the NATO chief. Now threatening NATO sanctions or European sanctions on China, when we know that the United States is going to put sanctions on China. What does that do to China? That basically places them back 10 years. But let me ask you this. Do you think for a moment that maybe this was all planned? That we have two rising new world orders, when 10 years ago we had one rising new world order. We had the 16-year plan, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, that was going to rise into the singular-headed one world government new world order. This is the Western-led, techno-fascist, authoritarian, oligarchical controlled, no vote. Everybody on the board of directors becomes the new government. No national sovereignty. All countries are all meshed together. And it came about after a world war and a pandemic. And after that, the great economic collapse, the world is picked up and put back together in the sense of a one world government by all these leading Western nations who were leading the path prior to this in the sense of the foundation of the new world. But we know that there was things happening that changed this. Number one is Donald Trump being elected in 2016 drastically changed that whole plan. It introduced what we call game theory and moves and counter moves. Well, starting in about 2019, Donald Trump started on a trip around the world where he met with various different world leaders. You had India's Modi actually come out to Texas and meet Donald Trump. You had Donald Trump go out to Helsinki in 2019 and meet with Vladimir Putin. You had him go to China, as well as Xi Jinping coming out to Mar-a-Lago. But Donald Trump went to China and went to the Forbidden City, where him and Xi Jinping went into the Forbidden City. He was the first president to ever have that happen to him. He went and met with Kim Jong-un in North Korea, even though that his plane was almost shot down on the way. He had the sword ceremony in Saudi Arabia. Now, what's interesting is about all of those countries are members of BRICS. The BRICS, the massive economic alliance that is formulated by Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and Singapore, is now at the forefront of the global economy. In just that little time, 2019 to 2024, that 5-year period, BRICS has massively grown over 48% in its economic development and in the sense of its gross domestic product. We're finding right now that more nations are actually joining. Yesterday, we talked about Malaysia. Today, more nations accepted. 4 major nations officially announced plans to join the BRICS alliance. This is a major milestone because I've said it from the beginning that the BRICS economic alliance is not an economic alliance. It is a military alliance because when you're talking about the utilization of economic sanctions or the control of a global economy, that is a weapon when it comes to warfare. Just as in the last 50 years, the United States has used economics in the sense of warfare. Confessions of an Economic Hitman, utilizing that in South America, Central America, and Southeast Asia to topple governments that were disobedient and would not align with Western values or with Western ideologies or Western politics. The CIA was sent in there to utilize economic warfare and to impose sanctions to take out those leaders by starving their people to death and producing various different types of terrorist or rebel organizations within those countries that rise up, produce color revolutions, and topple those governments so that the United States and the Central Intelligence Agency could install the leaders that they wanted in there. But it all started with the economic side by crashing the value of their natural resources or exploiting their natural resources to a very, very large end. We're seeing that the BRICS nations or the countries that are aligning with BRICS are no longer afraid of the United States of America. They're no longer afraid to be sanctioned by the United States of America or be attacked by the United States of America because of the growth of the BRICS alliance, because it also offers a defensive alliance. And that's what Jens Stoltenberg was just talking about there, that China is backing Russia financially, economically, in the sense of the war effort that is happening. And China has every interest to do this because of the ongoing conflict, the proxy war in Ukraine. Now, when we look at what's coming out of this, though, we have to ask ourselves, was this the plan? Was the plan to allow the BRICS nations to rise up to be a competitive group against the Western New World Order? I think that it absolutely was, because at the end of the day, Xi Jinping, which was aligned with the Western nations pre-2019, did not want to give up his country's national sovereignty, nor did he want to give up his power of his country, because he's basically dictator for life, like Chairman Mao. And the same thing goes for many of these other large-scale BRICS nations, including Russia and India and Saudi Arabia. They're not going to give up their national sovereignty to any one world government authority. Well, that's what the Western nations had planned. And that, in the sense, was their weakness, their strength of which they sought, that their goal, which they sought, was their major weakness. And the moment that you killed the dollar to such a large degree to where U.S. sanctions no longer mattered, when Russia showed the world that they could get around U.S. sanctions of the Ukrainian proxy war, when the United States and other European nations installed them on them. This showed the world that they no longer had to be afraid economically of what the United States could do. And this is why we're seeing this mass growth of the BRICS alignment in the BRICS nations. So it's kind of interesting, and don't even get me going on how they killed the US dollar. It's basically blockchain, gold-backed currencies, and renegotiation of old trade deals that are now becoming more pertinent, as well as the BRICS nations, China, Russia, and India, going out there and investing massively in third world countries' infrastructure as well as agriculture, basically producing a secondary methodology of imports into their country of the raw goods and services that they need, that they were typically getting from European nations or from the United States of America. Now they're getting them from these other BRICS nations, but they're building up the infrastructure first. So critically important in how this war is being waged and how this is all being done. So as we progress forward, when we look at the alliance between Russia and North Korea, this becomes incredibly significant. Firstly, North Korea carries a lot of secrets, especially from the Barack Obama era. And Donald Trump, I believe, learned a lot of these. Now we're seeing Vladimir Putin visit North Korea 24 years after the last visit. But is there also another time frame that we should probably look at? I found this interesting. Did you know that Donald Trump visited North Korea on June 12th, 2018? Almost 1 week, 6 years and 7 days ago. 6 years and 7 days ago, Donald Trump visited North Korea and visited Kim Jong-un. That's 2,199 days. So I decided to go look at the boards and see what 2,199 was. And I found it interesting that there was relevance here. The world is watching. The world is watching. So there's a delta of 6 years and 7 days, or 2,199 days, between when Trump visited North Korea and Putin visited North Korea. And in that delta is the message, the world is watching. So did World War III start today? It didn't start in the sense of nuclear bombs being dropped or anything of that nature. But it did start in the sense of two different things. The BRICS alliance basically fortifying their partnership deals with maligned countries that are not happy with the United States government or Western politics. On the second hand, you have Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO chief, threatening Russia and China with massive sanctions, and with Russia with ultimately World War III warfare. It's not saying that we need to or we're going to, but instead, let me rephrase that. Stoltenberg saying not that we need to, but we are going to. He basically said Russia is a threat to Europe if they remain in Ukraine. If they don't capitulate, there will be war. And Russia is not going to capitulate. They got the backing of so many other nations. So in essence, World War III kind of started today. I see it. It makes sense. Now, in a lot of that discussion we were just talking about, we talked about economic warfare. And economic warfare is critical to the survival of the deep state, to the new world order. They have to utilize the economics of the world to enrich themselves, to fund their proxy wars, to fund their various different types of operations, to topple nations, to control leaders. But they also use it to produce times of crisis, to provide very, very hard times for countries that they want to go in and topple or control. During COVID-19, we talked about how the major banks around the country in the United States of America were doing this program to where you could fill out a form online and you wouldn't have to pay your mortgage. It would go into forbearance for a period of time. And I said that this was ultimately going to lead to a mass amount of foreclosures when this was all said and done, because what was actually happening is that balance total that you weren't paying was being added back into a secondary loan on your mortgage. Basically, the bank was paying it for you, and you had to pay it back to them with no interest. But after the 6 months of not paying $16,000, $10,000, now that gets tacked on to your mortgage balance and you got to pay it back. And I said, that's going to skyrocket the cost of people's mortgages, at least for a few months, by $400, $500, $600. I know, because it did mine. And I said, as this progresses forward, people are going to begin foreclosing on their houses. Well, then we learned that the majority of the banks let go of tons of their foreclosure lawyers during that time of COVID, 2020, 2021, 2022. Around 2022, we started seeing a mass amount of foreclosures coming up and pending. We saw a 387% rise in foreclosures in June 2022 from 2020. That's a massive, staggering number. Since then, we've been waiting for this pending commercial real estate market to begin toppling off. Why? Because it's hyperinflated. The cost of real estate in the commercial side is just ridiculous. It's even ridiculous on the residential side. But that's also like that because of the aspects of hyperinflation. The problem with hyperinflation is the GDP of the country is also going down. This produces a scenario known as stagflation. And this is one of the primary indications of a decline into a recession or a depression. On top of that is that the prices of real estate haven't gone down and the stock markets continue to hit all-time highs. Well, none of that really makes sense until you start looking at all the economic numbers that are coming out from the Federal Reserve and various other federal government institutions. You start seeing that these numbers are very, very positive in the real time of the reporting, but 3 to 4 months later, or even 6 months later, they get updated, and that update does not become news. And when they get updated, we find out that there's a mass amount of deception actually going on with these numbers, and these numbers are massively illusionary. They're not real. They're making this shit up, and we can extend that directly over to Wall Street. The other part about it is that U.S. bonds are being dropped right back onto the market as fast as people are buying them. Countries like China and Russia are selling their bonds back onto the market. Well, the question is who's buying these hyperinflated bonds of the United States of America when the United States is paying every 6 months $1 trillion back onto their debt, and that's $10,000 a year for every American. Well, it's the Federal Reserve that's buying them up. That's not a good thing. The Federal Reserve is supposed to be selling those bonds off and issuing the notes, but instead are buying them back up. Then they do the reverse repo markets, as well as they go out there and they buy up corporate debt. So they go up and on the bond market and they buy up corporate debt bonds as well, almost like a fascist country where the Federal Reserve can print an endless stream of money to do whatever they want with. And that doesn't tack on to the national debt, but then they can go out there and utilize that funny money to go out there and buy up the actual real debt of businesses and nations. This is a scenario that is going to end very, very badly. And the indications that we get of this are going to occur primarily within the real estate markets. And I think that the residential real estate markets will be the first ones to get hit before the commercial real estate markets. But this goes back to another aspect that I've talked about. I said that they want you sick, homeless, hungry, defenseless, penniless, jobless, and begging for their help. That is what makes them a great crisis. But the first thing they have to do is make you homeless. Homeless starts with foreclosures. The interest rates right now on a 30-year mortgage are close to 7.5% to 8%. If you don't understand, that almost doubles your mortgage value. That's a massive increase in the amount of money that you're paying per month on an actual mortgage. Give you an idea. Back in 2012, I bought 2015, I bought a home in Colorado that I bought for $370,000. It's a $1,600 a month mortgage. To give you an idea, $1,600 a month mortgage. The same house that I just bought in Minnesota was about the same exact price. My mortgage is well over $1,000 more than that, plus $1,000 more. Astronomical, just because of the interest that's paid on it. How many more Americans are feeling that same thing? Then on the other side of the house, people aren't getting raises. The value of the money is going down. The purchasing power of that dollar is going down, but the cost of living is going up. From Fox News today, more Americans lost their homes in May as foreclosures move higher. We've had an 87% increase year after year of foreclosures this last year. It is time to wake up, people. What I highly recommend everybody do, and this is just the prepper inside of me, buckle up, get ready. But if you have the ability to do it, an acre of land, depending on where you are at, and you got to remember, I do what I call a gas of tank radius. 350 miles from the place that you live, a gas of tank radius. If you had one gas of tank, full gas tank, and you could drive somewhere in the midst of a crisis, where would it be? You better say your own land. And guess what? An acre of land is approximately anywhere from $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. It's not that expensive. You can take out a personal loan to get it, or you can just pay it outright. A lot of these people will accept cash offers at 85% of the actual value. Okay? Buy an acre, 2 acres, 3, 4 acres of land within a gas tank distance of your home. Then you go to Facebook Marketplace, you get a pop-up camper, $300 pop-up camper. Okay. You make sure it's got the oven and the stove and all that stuff. Make sure you got a few propane tanks. Make sure you have some solar power, which you can get for a few $100s. For like $3,000, you could have a really, really good setup. And people are like, hey, I'm struggling here. I don't have $3,000. Well, do what you can. But I'm saying if you have the ability to with what's coming, best to be prepared. What you need is an acre of land. Number one is because you need to invest in the United States of America. You need to invest in this land that our forefathers fought and died to get freedom for. Invest in the United States of America, buy an acre of land. The second thing that you need that acre of land for is if shit goes down, taxes on property like that are incredibly cheap. Sometimes $100 a year, $15 a year, $50 a year. Pay those taxes up for 10 years. So you don't have to worry about the tax bill. And you can go to the county and you can pay that up front. Now you would have a piece of land that is owned outright by you. The taxes are paid for a decade. You can plop your camper on it and you don't have to worry about anything. You can tap into the water table. You can have fresh, clean water right there and you can survive. You don't need the government, people. That's my one suggestion for everybody out there. So on top of that, and I'll throw this out there, if you are looking to get prepper supplies, if you are looking to get long-term food storage, those types of things, you can go to My Patriot Supply. I'm going to throw that out there just because shit's hitting the fan these days. My Patriot Supply, redpills.tv/patriot, redpills.tv/patriot. Now I'll even do this. Boom. Right there in the corner, redpills.tv/patriot. We'll keep that up there for a while. Okay, let's move on. They knew it. FBI knew for 8 fucking years. Hunter Biden and his business associates scored a $120 million deal with Ukrainian energy company Burisma, but they kept it hidden. They did nothing with it. They never went out and actually investigated anything. Everybody in the FBI who was involved in that, everybody who knew about that, who kept their mouth shut, who made sure that it stayed out of the news circuits, that people weren't investigating it, these people should be held criminally responsible. They should be placed in fucking jail and tried for treason. It is people like that that are in the bureaucracy of our government that allow the corruption to ensue. That shit needs to stop. Yesterday, we talked about fences going up around the Supreme Court building. Everybody was wondering what's going to happen here. Is the Supreme Court going to go out there and make a decision on something? We know that they had the immunity decision that they should be coming in with an answer with around September, October timeframe. So we know it's not that. But we also know that Donald Trump petitioned the Supreme Court for the trial that happened in New York, the debunked trial that happened in New York. Representative Byron Daniels has called on the United States Supreme Court to intervene in the lawfare attacks against President Donald Trump. And I think that this is why the fences went up at the Supreme Court building, at the Capitol building, and at the White House. Potentially, we could see the Supreme Court coming out there saying, because they have what's called original jurisdiction, saying that they're going to accept to hear Donald Trump's grievances and complaints. Why? Original jurisdiction is the proper manner of how the Supreme Court operates. The Supreme Court is actually the only court in the United States of America, the only constitutional court in the United States of America. With that being said, original jurisdiction, all court cases from lesser courts can be appealed directly to the Supreme Court, but primarily those of heads of states or former heads of states. I've talked about this for years. I think that they're going to make an announcement sometime in the next few weeks that they're going to accept this trial about Donald Trump and they're going to look into it. And this is going to cause the summer of love to begin breaking out, especially in Washington, D.C. The magazine The Economist 2024 presidential election forecast now gives Donald Trump a 72% chance of winning. Nothing can stop what's coming. Absolutely. Well, there's a few things, but nothing can stop what's coming, if you know what I mean. All right. Somebody needs to go change the batteries in Joe Biden's clone AI. There's something seriously wrong with this man and all the people behind him. Listen to this.
Thanks to all the members of Congress and Homeland Security Secretary. I'm not sure going to understand.
What the fuck did he just say? Let's hear that one more time.
Thanks to all the members of Congress and Homeland Security Secretary. I'm not sure going to understand.
I think he just had a seizure. This is elder abuse. I don't know what's going on there. You can't tell the people, you have to show them. And what a better puppet than that one. And anybody who wants to tell me that Joe Biden is in power and control over there is absolute batshit crazy. We knew he's never has been. It's a shadow presidency. But the Democrats just smile and cheer behind him. Today, 911 emergency services across Massachusetts were down for several hours after the system just magically crashed. Residents could not reach emergency services amid sweltering heat wave. Temperatures soared to the upper 90s with the heat index on Tuesday. Authorities are not saying why this happened. But if we go back a little bit in history, we go back about 2.5 months ago. 2.5 months ago, 19 states around the United States of America lost 911 communication services, including my state of Minnesota. 19 states. A few weeks after that, we had a few more states lose 911 services. And many months before that, we had quite a few other states lose 911 services, including Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida. If we go back to 2020, December 2020, we know that in Tennessee at the AT&T headquarters, there was an attempted terrorist attack that would have taken down all the 911 communications for the Eastern Seaboard. Why is it imperative to be able to take down the 911 communication systems? Well, it's incredibly important. I'm going to tell you why in a second, but what I want you to see is the parallels here. We are hearing that this is a cyber attack on their systems. We know that all these other ones prior to this were cyber attacks too. It's definitely not climate change, get it done, but it's cyber attacks. So why would they want to take down the 911 emergency communication systems? Well, number one is you can't call in crime when you're seeing it. So when the advent of the summer of love comes about, now you don't know when the police are going to come because you can't contact them. But see, there's another important part that they don't say in any news broadcasting stations about the 911 communication systems. See, the coordination of police officers, the dispatching of police officers, the interagency communication is done through those services. So when a police station is talking to another police station in collaboration, or police officers are dispatched to various different points of crime, it's done through that station. So when it goes down, not only are they not responding to you, they're not responding to anything. They're not responding to each other. So in the advent where the summer of love comes up, riots break out, and we have, 13 million terrorists that begin rising up and taking power within major cities, like the various different 18 to 35-year-old Chinese nationals, white Chinese males that have been coming over the border, the Chinese nationals that are military aged, or the various different ideological centric Middle Eastern and North and African people that have been coming over the border that have been labeled as terrorist groups, like Hezbollah Unit 910, which we know thousands of them have come over. When those units begin to rise up in the cities and formulate into groups of 5 and start taking out police stations and start taking out various different points of communication within cities to control those cities to a large degree, there's going to be no communication possible through the 911 communication systems. There's going to be no way to get emergency alerts out. This is how they do it, guys. It's part of the firestorm. This is why we're watching this. This is the same reason we see the attacks on the supply chain. The over 250 plus food processing, manufacturing, and distribution facilities that have burned down. The various different chicken farms, millions upon millions of chickens being culled or burned down. The livestock, the beef farm just blows up, 18,000 cows killed. It's not a coincidence. This is quite literally the firestorm that I've been talking about for 4 or 5 years now. The Biden regime sends the FBI to intimidate nurse who blew the whistle on Texas Children's Hospital's child sex change program. Christopher Rufo recently shared on X that the Biden administration sent 2 FBI agents to intimidate a nurse who told the truth about the child sex change program at Texas Children's Hospital. The regime is mobilizing to threaten and imprison anyone who opposes transgender surgery. Writing in the City Journal, Rufo detailed the events that led to the FBI's intimidating encounter with the nurse. Vanessa Cividage, a registered nurse at Texas Children's Hospital, saw a dramatic rise in the number of transgender children treated at the hospital beginning in 2021. These patients struggled with depression, anxiety, addiction, suicide attempts, physical abuse, discomfort with puberty. However, instead of addressing these underlying psychological conditions, doctors at the hospital diagnosed them with gender dystropia and assigned them to the regime of gender-affirming care. When Cividage voiced her concerns about this practice, she was visited by 2 FBI agents, Paul Nixon and David McBride, who told her she was a person of interest in an investigation targeting the whistleblower who had exposed a child sex change program. They threatened me, Savage told Rufo. They promised they would make life difficult for me if I was trying to protect the leaker. They said I was not safe at work and claimed that someone at my workplace had given my name to the FBI. I've said this before. They're not just coming after Donald Trump. They're coming after all of us. You, me, everybody. They just haven't gotten to us yet. You remember the Department of Homeland Security? You remember the FBI? Remember the different memos that they were promoting among each other? Remember the FBI whistleblower who came out, said that the FBI is moving away from actually investigating real terrorist crimes and looking into right-wing extremism, groups like Patriot groups that like the American flag or talk about the founding fathers, that the CIA is doing the same exact thing, that the Biden administration, the Department of Homeland Security, and FBI are all working together to come and look and investigate right-wing extremism, a term that they made up, that it's just someone who's patriotic to their country and portrays the flag. At the same time, you have 85,000 IRS agents that are hired under the Joe Biden administration that we knew were going to be utilized to target you, me, and everybody else. They said they weren't, but we know now that that's actually true, that it's going to be people who make less than $300,000 a year. They're going to get audited more often, and 85,000 IRS agents were made for that. Steve Bannon has been under attack as well. I'm not a big fan of Steve Bannon. I'd go on his show. I'd have him on my show. I'd talk to the guy. I don't know him personally. But I want you to listen to his words here, because he's right. He's right. And I played this before, but I'm going to play it again.
If they steal this election, and they fully intend to steal it, this republic ends. Are you prepared to fight? Are you prepared to give it all? Are you prepared to leave it all on the battlefield? Ladies and gentlemen, it's very simple. Victory or death.
Unfortunately, he's not wrong. Yesterday, we talked about the assembling of various different camps, FEMA camps, that are coming up all around our country. They're looking at them as internment camps for illegal immigrants, or migrants, as they call them, coming over the southern border. But that's not actually the case, because of the majority, 99% of those illegal immigrants that are being housed into the major cities of the United States of America are given free room and board and food. by those various different states through taxpayer subsidies, the federal government subsidies that are coming in for that. And they're being put up at hotel rooms, Airbnbs, and so forth. So these aren't holding facilities for them. They're saying that they're holding facilities for children and unaccompanied minors and parents and families that are coming over, but that's not the case either. But then we talked about quarantine camps, bringing that back from, Alex Jones back in the day in 2010 to 2015, talking about FEMA camps. We have the avian flu, which we know the World Health Organization, Tedros, has been talking about massively. Are they planning something? I think they are, because they will scorch this earth before they ever give Donald Trump back power. And nothing can stop Donald Trump right now. He is going to win that election. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And they can't allow that to happen. So they need a crisis to occur. That crisis has to occur so that they win. Just like in Ukraine when Russia invaded them, quote unquote, Zelensky arrested the opposition party. Most of them died of suicide in their houses, and he seized power and control of the country. But it's still viewed as a democratic nation. Something very similar could happen here. I hope not. I pray not. But get ready. The Buffalo Bills are helping to create a new gay flag football team. I thought this was a joke. The Buffalo Bills have announced they will sponsor a Buffalo chapter of the National Gay Flag Football League. In the Instagram post, the Buffalo Bills wrote, "We're proud to support the National Gay Flag Football League with a sponsorship to launch the league in Buffalo." Yeah, that's kind of odd. I mean, hey, look, more power to you. If the Buffalo Bills want to put their money there, great, go ahead. But yeah, I just kind of odd. Like, gay flag football and NFL really just kind of don't go together. I don't know. It just doesn't. I don't know. More on the lawfare here. Connecticut Bar Association warns lawyers that dissenting opinions on the Trump Bragg lawfare suit will not be tolerated. So the bar, which is British in origin and British ran, is warning lawyers that putting out any dissenting disagreements about the Donald Trump trial, consequences will be had. As in the pulling of their licenses. A lot what they've done to a lot of different politicians or a lot of different lawyers over the last few years. Rudy Giuliani and various others. That's lawfare. That's how they operate. But you got to wonder, is there something going on here? Is there something different in our world? Because lots of things are coming forth right now. Lots of truth and information. For many years, we've talked about intermittent fasting and how intermittent fasting is amazing for your health. Right there, if you see immune-modulated mushrooms, those are great for your health too. You can find them at redpills.tv/mushrooms. That's how we support our channel, so that's why I put them out there like that. But there are also some things that you can take while you're fasting, and they help you massively. But intermittent fasting is a powerful tool to boost your immune system as well. So much so that study finds intermittent fasting supercharges natural killer cells to destroy cancer. Allowing your body to not eat, to not intake anything, to allow it to process and get things out of the way, to the ribosomes go out there and start to eat all those dead cells or decaying cells or bad proteins, kills cancer cells. The strongest defense that you have against a cancer-ridden world that we live in is just to abstain from eating 24 hours at a time. 24-hour fast, eat for a few days. 24-hour fast, eat for a few days. It works amazingly. On the other side of the house, in the sense of health, and by the way, the mushrooms, you can see people talking about them. They're awesome. They're fantastic. I've never seen so many people come to me with their feedback. If you got feedback and testimonials about the Pet Club 247 mushrooms, the immune modulating mushrooms that we have here at the Red Pill Project, please send me your testimonials. I want to hear everything and all the good stuff. So you can find that at redpills.tv/mushroom. You remember a few years ago, there was like these monoliths that were coming up in the UK and Utah and all over the country. Well, just a few months ago, another one showed up in the UK, and they're saying, oh, this is some movie prop person running pranks on people. But see, the problem is they can't move these things. They are deeply embedded in the ground. They can't pull them up. Not only that, is they disappear on their own just as fast as they appeared. Another one has just appeared near a hiking trail in Gas Peak on the northern side of Las Vegas. This one seems a little bit shinier than all the rest. And these are solid. These things are absolutely solid. And nobody knows who's installing them, and they can't remove them. In a few days, it'll magically just disappear. Is there something else going on this planet? Are there signals that are being sent to us about maybe things that things that are potentially going to happen, that maybe we're not alone? I don't know. It's an interesting time to be alive. And I'm very, very hopeful that out of all of this chaos that we're seeing unfold right now, that a lot of good is going to come out of it. But the good only comes about when you, me, and everybody else who are on the right side of history stand up and fight for what we believe in. Fight for the love of our country, the love of freedom, the ability to go out there and create a life for yourself. That's what this is ultimately about. The ability to be free, free within your mind, free within your body, free within your soul. We are in a massive spiritual battle right now. And I believe that there are maybe other spiritual beings out there that are sending us signals, telling us that, hey, keep going. Everything's going to be okay. I'd love to go see one of these. If one comes close to me, I'm going to go find it. It's summer. I can take the time. I'll do it. It'll be fun. But hey, guys, that's all I have for you tonight. This is the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose. Please hit us up over at redpills.tv. Go subscribe over there. Visit us over at socialredpill.com. That's our private social network. You can help support us over there. And thank you so much for everybody supporting us on everything that you guys have done. This has been a blast the last, 5-6 years that we've been doing this. So much love, respect. God bless you guys. You guys all have a great night. I'm going to get out of here before the storms. Storms are rolling in right now. I hear the thunder. We're under tornado watch too. So I'm going to get out of here, but much love, respect. God bless. Take care, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Good night.
Boone, that's impossible. Only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.